Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Will Arnold, Head of Climate Action, the Institution of Structural Engineers. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes on action that our institution has been taking around embodied carbon over the last 12-ish months. I've just got 4 or 5 slides to sort of go through on this. So the first thing to highlight is the sort of breadth of guidance that we've been providing for members. This diagram on the screen, this sustainability resource map, should be available online by the end of January, if not sooner. This is an update to a version that we published last year. It's got about twice as many links in it now. So it's somewhere in the region of 200 or so links to different bits of guidance on everything from accounting for carbon, designing for lower carbon versions of steel and concrete and so on, through things like reuse, circular economy, and down even into some of the sort of, how do you persuade people to make change and stuff like that. You can download this as a PDF and you can then search once you've got it, because you can do Control F. And all of the items on here are actually clickable links. So at the top here, this is just a sort of blow up of one of the essential resource sections up here at the top on sort of embodied carbon. So each of these individual things takes you to a web page where you can download it. And I'd probably say that about half the content or so is free for non-members as well. So anything that's sort of carbon basics, if you like, we've made free for anyone who wants it. Anything that's very much specific to the structural engineer and how they do their day job, we've kept within the membership. But yeah, to give you a sort of feel for, that means there's probably at least sort of 60 or 70 items of guidance on here, I think, that are free for anyone who wants them. We've been producing that since 2020, the middle of 2020. We've been sort of working on this and all these guidance documents. And the reason why we've been doing it is really to sort of build up the capability of the membership so that they can start to do things that, as of this year, we will start to introduce as being mandatory requirements for structural engineers. So our chartered engineer application process was already pretty stringent, pretty hard to get through, as anyone who's taken it would tell you. It involves an interview based on a report that you've written about your sort of initial professional developments, and then that's followed by uses a one-day structural exam, where you're required to actually come up with a sort of scheme design for 2 buildings, the concept design for 2 answers to 1 brief, and then you take one of those designs all the way through to the point where a QS could quantify how much material you need. With both of those, we've now brought in embodied carbon, sustainability and reuse. So both within your the experience that you need to gain in your first few years of employment, all of which leads up to that report and that interview, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've been calculating carbon, that you've been reporting it, whether people ask you to or not, and ideally that you've been looking for ways in which to reduce it. And that you may, and this is not a sort of mandatory bit, but it's put in there to encourage, at least for now, you may have also been involved in reuse. So we're encouraging reuse as a sort of item by itself within there. We don't feel we can mandate it yet because we have a global membership. And the feedback we got from some of our international members early on was that it would be a bit harsh to start saying that without reuse experience, you can't become chartered, because a lot of people around the world would find that quite difficult to get. But it is in there as a sort of a nice thing to have if you can. So we are encouraging that. On the exam side, it's then going to become mandatory that you've got some sort of basic working knowledge of reusing bits, whether that's an existing slab from a building, whether it's some existing beams that the client's got hold of from another job, or whether it's something that the brief that you're set involves adding or extending to an existing building or altering an existing building. We're going to make that mandatory. That will come in slowly. I think the plan is from this year, 1 question out of the 5 that you could choose to do, 1 brief out of the 5 rather, would have a reuse aspect, but that will go up year on year. You would also be required to be able to calculate the embodied carbon of the elements that you design. So we're really making this sort of at the heart, and the point of all that guidance was to make it nigh on impossible for a graduate to say that we haven't given them the tools and the skills to do that stuff. It's all out there if they want it. We'll also, and I don't think I've got a slide on this, from this year, we're also upping our CPD requirements. So at IStructE, you're required each year to report at least 30 hours of continued professional development. And for a while now, 6 hours of that have been mandated as safety-based learning. The professional review panel last year voted, and this was then approved by board, voted to move sustainability up to a par with safety from that manner. So I think, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go, but I think what we're going to do is require that you also report 6 hours of sustainability-based learning each year. Watch this space for that, but that should be coming in this year as well. We also updated our awards last year. So last year was a completely refreshed approach to the awards. We always used to have categories of buildings, and that's gone back a very long way. So if you designed, well, it used to be the case, if you design a commercial building or a residential or healthcare building, you'd enter it into that category. About 10 years ago, we changed that. So it became based on sort of structural challenges, if you like. So if you design a tall building, you went into one category. If you design a long span structure, a different category. But last year, we said that what we actually wanted to focus on and celebrate as an institution was the outcomes of these projects, rather than the sort of physical manifestation of what it was that was created. You know, what does it actually do for people and the planet, these buildings that are being built and these bridges that are being built? So we removed all those categories, and projects now get judged on their own merits. You enter, you write a sort of report about your project, explaining why it's great, and you can do that in whatever terms you think are applicable to the project. And then the judges will judge based on these 4 attributes on the screen. People and planets are probably fairly self-explanatory to you. Process is the sort of technical side, so we're not losing the need to be able to demonstrate technical rigor and pushing the boundaries in terms of what you're trying to do from a structural engineering point of view. And profession is all about sort of sharing back with the profession, so sharing lessons learned back with other structural engineers around the world, so that we can all sort of build on each other's knowledge base. And we got a really, really rich set of projects in last year. And on the right are some of the winners from last year's awards. And we hope to see this continue as we go through. Couple of other things that we're going to start focusing on. So we want to bring some more clarity around materials this year. There's a lot of work going on across material industries, be it concrete, steel, timber, brick, aluminium, glass, you name it. Every industry is trying to do what they can at the moment to work out how they can reduce the carbon footprint of what they produce. We want to try and make it more transparent to our members as to what that exists out there is an innovation that's still in the lab that you probably can't get onto a site yet, what you could go out and procure, what the technologies behind some of these fancy names are, how much it's likely to be available, what sorts of things you could use with it. Should you import GGBS? Should you not? Should you use more scrap steel? Should you not? So we're going to work up a series of sort of position papers around this year that hopefully will bring some sort of clarity to those topics. In terms of what we did last year, was just get to the conclusion that we really needed this. And whilst we've got lots of different documents and bits of guidance all over the place on these, nothing yet sort of pulled it all into one place. So that's the challenge for this year. And we also spent last year, I think this is the final slide I've got. We also spent last year writing this design guide for circular economy, which is a really big thing to have done. I think this is really quite significant because until now, from what we could see, there was no one-stop shop for a guide that taught you about how to reuse a building, components, and design for future reuse down at a sort of nuts and bolts level. There's lots of really good guidance out there that's on a slightly more sort of brief setting level, if you like. And there are, of course, great bits of guidance out there on sort of specific topics. But from the structural engineer's point of view, and of course, if you can reuse the structure, you've saved something like 2/3 of the carbon footprint of the building. From the structural engineer's point of view, there wasn't one place to go to bring this all together. So we commissioned a whole series of authors to help write this last year, and hopefully this will now get published, I think, in February. It was finished drafting in December, and we're waiting on the sort of final edits and typesetting to take place. So please look out for that when it comes out. I think you can probably actually already pre-order it. I'm not quite sure where you get to do that, but get in touch with me if you're interested in that.